Good evening, people. Hopefully you're joining us because the preamble for the football isn't any good. We've got Avni joining us from Dental Shots Lon. We're going to chat about some denture design. Very nearly. We had a delivery come for a garden chair and I managed to lock myself out without my phone, so that was good. Fortunately, Apple Watch saved the day and landlord lives down the road. But mad panic about 15 minutes ago, so it took me a little while to calm down. But hey, hope everyone's doing good. We've got lots on already, it's great. And hopefully Avni can join us pretty quick. Let's see, here we got our mics on. Nina first in, well done Nina, and Avni's into it. Hey.
Hey, hi.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I was just telling everyone my mad panic about getting locked out, but I made it. How are you getting on?
Hey.
You doing all right?
Yeah.
Hi, Salim. Perfect. So we're going to chat about some partial denture design. We've got an exclusive Impression Club animation, so we've got all that to look forward to. But just give us all a little intro if anyone doesn't know who you are, or well, they'll know you as Dental Shots, so they won't necessarily know you as Avni. So give us a little intro.
Yeah. So I'm Avni, and I am a prosthodontist, and I did my graduation and masters from India, and immediately after completing that, I moved here to London along with my husband, and it was 2 years ago when we moved here, and after that I started preparing for the licensing exam over here, the ORE and the LDS exam. But then because of the COVID, they postponed the exam. And so I was supposed to give it last year. And then they postponed it. And so now, like on 1st of June this month, I gave the LDS part 1. I'm still waiting for the results. But yeah, so during lockdown, I started, I was like, now what to do? I don't, there's no exam, what to do? So
You
I
had all the
started.
knowledge in there and it had to come out somewhere.
Yeah, so so that's when I thought like, okay, let me start an Instagram page, and I can, because I was studying, and I was like, how to keep myself motivated, because it's really tough and you don't know when the exams are, and they didn't even tell us like when they will take the exam. So that's when I was like, okay, so initially it was just in the form of drawings and all, but gradually I was like, only if only they could move, like why aren't they moving? It would have been so much easier. So that's when I started, learning about animation. I started doing the research. I watched a lot of YouTube videos and all that, and that's when I started. So initially it was more like the words were moving, but the thing the denture is not moving. So so initially it was like that, but then gradually I learned all that. And so on my Instagram page, it's more about prosthodontics, and I do all the animation, trying to make the concept a little bit easier to understand, so that and more interesting, I guess.
Yeah, and you've been teaming up with Mike as well, who I know is on today. You've been doing a few ones with Mike there, which have gone down really well. So we're going to chat about partial denture design. So I know you want to sort of break it down into sort of basic principles. Sort of, do you have like a checklist that you go through? Is it very sort of regimented? How do you want to start it?
Okay, so there are certain steps, like the sequence of steps that you have to follow when you are doing a design. So whenever you are starting on designing something, you have to make sure that your design is effective in terms of support. Like there has to be a good support so that it is able to bear all the forces that is acting on it. Along with that, it should have the design should be simple, so that there's lesser amount of plug accumulation. Similarly, it has to be rigid at the same time. The connectors, it needs to be rigid. So there are. I'll just show you this.
Yeah, straight into the animations.
Yeah. So this is the only slide that's a bit dull, but don't worry.
This is taking me back to third year, so saddle support retention.
Yeah. So these are the steps that we'll be following. So initially you just have to mark your saddle and then mark your support, and followed by retention, bracing, connector, indirect retention, and finally review your design. So this is like just the sequence that you have to follow. Okay, so this is.
Oh, here we go.
So this is the we are going to design this case. So in this, let's just start first. We'll just put the saddles first. We'll just mark the saddle, the area where the teeth are missing. So let's just mark that first, followed by putting the support. So support means wherever you can get the maximum support from. So in this case, for example, you'll be putting the rest seats everywhere. Also, initially, before doing the designing, you have to do the surveying and decide the path of insertion for the prosthesis. And after that, you have to go with these steps. So after doing the support, it's also in case of distal extension, it's usually decided to go for a mesial rest instead of distal rest. But in this situation, there's a distal rest instead of a mesial rest because the tooth is rotated, and if you put a mesial rest over here, it won't be aesthetically good. So that is why we are putting a distal rest in this situation.
And just making it awkward for us.
So I'll just show one animation after this as to why we need a mesial rest instead of a distal rest in distal extension cases. And this is like a very simple concept. In case of, let's say this is the distal rest. Starting with the distal rest, let's say we put a distal rest on a distal extension situation, and let's see what happens after that. So whenever the forces are acting on this, the distal rest will cause tipping of the tooth in this direction. So the tooth will move in this direction whenever the forces are acting. So in this situation, if there is a tipping in this direction, what will happen is that the tooth will it won't be good for the tooth. So now let's see what will happen if there's a mesial rest. If there's a mesial rest, let's say over here, what will happen whenever there is a tipping that is present? It will be supported by the adjacent teeth. So there will be movement, but there will be support from the adjacent teeth. So that is why it is best to use to give a mesial rest in distal extension cases rather than a distal rest. So that's the reason why we prefer giving a mesial rest instead of a distal rest. And the next step in the designing is marking your retention. Now, whenever you are choosing your retentive arms, it could be occlusally approaching or it could be gingivally approaching, depending on the undercuts that you have. So like in this situation, we'll be putting a retentive arm over here, and one retentive arm over here, and one over here. Now, if you are giving a gingivally approaching retentive arm, so in this situation we are not giving any gingivally approaching, we are giving all the arms are occlusally approaching. But if you are giving a gingivally approaching, you have to see whether there are any bony undercuts that are present. So in case there is any bony undercut, it will cause trauma to the gingival tissues. So because of that, you can't give a gingivally approaching arm, retentive arm. And at the same time, if you are giving, if there's a frenum, high frenal attachment, so in that situation as well, you cannot give gingivally approaching arm. And then depending on the undercut, and again, this is where your surveying comes into picture. Depending on the survey lines, if whether the survey line is diagonal or is it low or is it high, depending on that, you choose your retentive arm. So yeah. Now another thing that that is there is using RPI concept for the distal extension cases. So I'll just show one animation that will explain how the RPI concept works in general. So yeah. So this in I'll just yeah. So this is the rest, the mesial rest, the proximal plate, and the I bar. So that is the RPI concept. Now, as the forces they act on the saddle is pressed down. Now, when the saddle is pressed down, the rest it will move in this direction. It will get rotated. So so the mechanics is like this part of the saddle is moving down. So in order to resist that movement, the denture will get rotated at this point. The mesial rest, it will get rotated at this point, and followed by the I bar and the tooth, the plate. It will move in this direction. Now, what will happen if they are getting disengaged from the tooth surface? So the main concept behind this is that we don't want the unwanted forces or the bad forces to fall on the tooth, so that because that is going to be bad for the tooth. So we don't want that to happen. Or in general, we can say we need the distribution of the load to be equal everywhere. So the best thing to do is to get these disengaged during function. So so the proximal plate and the I bar will get disengaged, and it will move in this direction, so that the forces on the tooth doesn't fall on the tooth.
Yeah, it's just making sure you're not overloading it, isn't it, really?
Yeah. So so we don't want to overload the tooth with all the forces. So yeah. So this is the RPI concept, and yeah. And after that, also, yeah, I forgot to mention one point. You have to make each component, like the retentive component and the reciprocal component and all that, with a specific color. So it is always best to draw them so that there is a good communication between the dentist and the technician, and they are able to follow your whatever you are expecting from them. And so if you are using different colors, it will be easy to differentiate between the different components. So the next step is marking the bracing and the reciprocation components. So the bracing is it's marked with the blue blue color, and the bracing and the reciprocation. So the main concept behind, and also the saddle over here, it is also responsible for bracing, because it is going to resist the lateral forces that will be acting from this direction, or the forces. So in case of removable partial dentures, the forces, they are acting from all the directions. It's never like there's one force from this and one force from this. It's all from all the places. So so that is why we need to get maximum support from all the components, and that is why it is best to cover a maximum tissue possible. And so that is why we are putting so bracing is basically the given by the reciprocal arm and also from the saddle. So yeah, so this is bracing, and I'll just show one another animation quickly. So why we really need a reciprocal clasp design? Why can't it just be retentive arm? So again, the whole concept is behind how we distribute our load equally, and how the load is not just pointed on one particular tooth or one particular area, because if it is distributed equally, if it is distributed equally, it is going to the forces is going to, there'll be less resorption compared to if it is just acting on one tooth. So let's just play this. So this is the retentive arm, and another thing, whenever a retentive arm, the terminal end of the retentive arm, it has to follow, and it has to go below the bulbosity of the tooth. So let's say this is the bulbous area. So the retentive arm, which has to be the terminal end of the retentive arm, which has to be flexible. It has to go beyond the terminal, beyond the bulbous area of the tooth. And the reciprocal arm, so I'll just show it. And the reciprocal arm is, it will come over here. So whenever you have a retentive arm in this area, and it will go beyond the bulbous, so at that moment it will put pressure on the tooth, and let's say the direction of the force is medially directed. So we want to resist that force, and in order to resist that medially directed forces on the abutment, we need a reciprocal arm. So basically the reciprocal arm is given so that it can counteract the retentive arm forces. Does that make sense?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah.
And the bracing, that can be part of framework as well, potentially. It's all you're talking chromes predominantly, aren't you? So, and even in acrylics, you get a little bit from the flange and things like that. So then you've gone through that, and then indirect retention. That's going to be a final.
So you get bracing from your reciprocal arm, and from the saddle, the whole framework. So the more the coverage you are doing, so that's why we need your saddle to extend beyond the retromolar pad and beyond the tuberosity, so that it is able to resist the forces all over. And so the more the coverage, the better the resistance. That's the concept.
Yeah, so I think people have sort of, when they do chromes like that, and they think, well, I haven't got to go that far because I don't need the retention, because I've got the clasps, and I don't need to get all that coverage, to the tuberosities and things. But they say it's gonna increase your support in those areas. It's gonna maximize balancing of those forces. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really easy to get sort of sidetracked like that. Like I'm doing a lecture on implant retained dentures, and that's the main thing, is like, just make really good dentures, and don't get over, don't think or rely too much on the implants, or in this case on the clasps and things like that, because it doesn't matter how retentive it is, if it's not supportive, you're going to lose stability. So yeah, it's all about just balancing, distributing that force, as you say. So what do you want to go through next? Have you got some other sort of different sort of
Yeah.
Kennedy classifications or those kind of things?
Yeah. One more point that you just reminded me of is that whenever let's say there's a class 3 Kennedy class 3 situation, so you have two teeth present on both sides. So in that situation, if your major connector is not covering the whole palate, it is fine because you'll be getting support from both the teeth. But if let's say it's Kennedy's class 1 or class 2, in that situation it is there are less number of teeth, so you'll be getting less support from the teeth. So in that situation, you need to cover more of the palatal area, more coverage of the palatal area, and extending your flanges properly so that you get better support.
Yeah, Mike's come straight in there. Good support saves the remaining teeth. Absolutely,
Yeah.
Mike. Absolutely. You don't want to be adding on to your chromes. It's a nightmare.
Yeah, that day we were having a chat and I was like, I have to go for this live with Rupert. He was like, you have to talk about this. You have to talk about the denture.
That's what he was just on to check that. He's going to go off and cook his dinner now that he's sorted that. All right, so next little bit, I think the last bit he said was on after the bracing was indirect retention, wasn't it?
Yeah. So
you're going to have a lovely distal aspect lines. I can see it coming. I'm looking forward to it. So it's watching all these because most of these are all posts that you've done, isn't it? But in like bite-sized chunks. It's like bringing it all together. It's like
yeah. So when I was actually thinking of making the presentation for this live, I was like, I've covered this, I've covered almost everything. So
it's just in little bite-sized chunks. We had a question as well: is how do you juggle all your studies and all the Instagram stuff? But I guess you're saying you're sort of doing both, aren't you? Really?
So yeah, so it's more like I am learning from
learning through teaching. Yeah.
So I actually get to learn so much from whatever I'm doing, and especially like Mike helped me a lot with all that, because these concepts are like it's right there, but you don't get them until unless you just see them, or you when I'm making the animation, I'm like, yeah, this is the point. This was what and it never occurred to me. I don't know how, but yeah.
No, I'm the same. Like, I find that I like, even at university, I would revise we'd sort of like pick a topic each and say, right, tomorrow you're going to teach me this and I'm going to teach you that, and you'd learn it better when you try and put it in your own words to explain it, don't you? But yeah, so you're doing both at the same time, so you're not even juggling. Perfect. So next bit, I'm looking forward to this. I can already see it, and I think I've probably seen a post on indirect retention already. So.
Yeah, so next one is about minor connectors and the indirect retention. So yeah, so like I said just now, if it was just this class 3, we would have not done a complete palatal coverage. But since in this situation we have a distal extension as well over here, we need a greater coverage over here. But at the same time, if you leave this part, the rugae area, it helps the patient to get better, how do you say it, a better comfort, because then it won't hinder with the the speech, and it will be more comfortable for the patient. So that's yeah. So you leave this part, and at the same time, sometimes I've seen actually some modifications that are done, and in which they kind of put some extensions over here in this area. So whenever you have acrylic in this region, it will basically help in getting attached or getting engaged with the prosthesis.
Some people go for like acrylic post dams still, even on the chromes and things like that. Zeba says she's learning a lot from dental shots, and Mike says it's easy to know all this when you're as old as he is. You said it, Mike. I didn't. Perfect.
So after this, it's all about how to decide where to put indirect retainer. So in this situation, there's already an indirect retainer that we have placed. Now we'll see where to locate your indirect retainer. So there's this animation that I made some time back, and so let me start this one. Yeah. So the key to decide where you will locate your indirect retainer is first that you locate your fulcrum axis. So the fulcrum axis is basically it axis that passes from your last abutment tooth. So in this situation, if this is the last abutment and this is the last abutment, so you'll pass a fulcrum axis from this. So you locate the fulcrum axis. Now your indirect retainer has to be perpendicular, and it has to be as far away possible. So yeah, so we will position, let's say in this situation, we are this incisor is the farthest, and it will be perpendicular to this fulcrum axis. But there's a glitch in this. You can't put indirect retainer. I'm like, you can't put, but it's not like you can't put, but it's like it's not favorable in this situation, because the load the incisors will not be able, especially in the situation it's a lateral incisor, so it won't be able to bear the load that much compared to if you have a premolar. So that is why the indirect retention on incisors will be ideal, but then you won't have good support. So that is why you need to put indirect retainer on premolars in this situation.
Yeah,
So,
it's all about it's rotation around that axis, isn't it? That's what you're trying to prevent.
Yeah. So indirect retainer, they just so this is the fulcrum axis, and the indirect retainer will try to prevent the movement along this axis. So that's what the indirect retainer will help to do. And at the same time, it has to be as far away possible, and it has to be perpendicular. As perpendicular as possible. You can't keep it totally perpendicular, but as much as possible. So yeah. So this is the indirect retainer, and yeah. So the next one is this one is pretty simple compared to the last one. This is in this you have a distal extension over here, and you have a class 3 over here, and following the same steps, will mark the saddle, followed by the support. So the rest will be placed in, since this is a distal extension, we'll be placing a mesial rest in this situation over here. And then again, this is a class 3. So you'll have support from both the teeth over here. So a rest over here and another rest over here. Followed by a reciprocal, the retentive arm. So a retentive arm can be placed over here. Now again, depending on whether you have the type of undercut that you have, depending on that, you'll be placing your retentive arm. It could be gingivally approaching, it could be occlusally approaching, depending on the survey lines. The same thing, and followed by the reciprocal and the bracing. Also, one more point is that the proximal plate, it also helps in giving the reciprocation and the bracing effect. So that's how. And then again, the major and the minor connectors. So you have more options in case of maxilla, because you have a greater palatal coverage. So you can give, you can modify your designs depending on how much support you need. But in case of mandible, you have very few options. For example, in this situation, it's a lingual bar. So it depends basically on how much lingual, how much floor distance between the gingival margin and the floor of the mouth. So that distance basically helps you to decide what kind of major connector you'll be using. So yeah, so this
Lingual,
is,
lingual bar, lingual plate.
yeah.
It's 3 millimeters.
Yeah, so it has to be, so the distance has to be 3 millimeters from the gingival margin, but then it shouldn't interfere with the function, the tongue function. So that is why.
Yeah.
So
Important to get a good functional impression there, so you know where the muscles of the floor of the mouth want to be and things like that. Not overextend and think you've got loads of space and then your
yeah,
phone works in right in
yeah,
the way.
yeah. So whenever you have a lot of space present, you can use a bar. Otherwise, you can go for a plate. And
Mike
so
says, bend that rule, it's safe. You're going Scandi though in that kind of situation, aren't you, Mike?
yeah.
Perfect. Excellent. So we've got a third situation
Yeah,
case to go through.
so yeah, I get this question all the time, like where to place your rest seats in case of class 4 situation. So I couldn't do the drawing, but yeah, but I just got a picture from from the internet, and this is the class 4 situation. So in case of class 4, you'll be so you'll be replacing these teeth. So you'll be placing your rest seats and a single rest seat over here in class 4. Now the axis will be like this. The fulcrum axis will be passing like this. So you need to place it as far away as possible. So yeah, so you'll be placing your rest seats on the distal aspect of the 7. Now in this situation you have a 8 as well, so the mesial and the distal aspect of 7 and 8, and similarly over here. So like an embrasure clasp. So yeah, so in this situation you'll be you'll be doing that. If there's no 8, then it is 7, 6 and 7 on both the sides. So it has to be as far away as possible, and it has to be perpendicular. So if the fulcrum axis is like this, the farthest will be this. So
Yeah, that's not a fun situation, that one, is it really?
yeah.
Did you see Finley's case? He did a similar one with sort of the Scandinavian, almost like the splint style. It's over all of the palatal cusp. Was a really interesting design. Mike's probably seen it.
Okay.
That's a really interesting one.
Okay, I
that
actually
kind of case.
I didn't see that one, but then yeah, I saw one of his case in which there was just one tooth remaining in the complete arch, and he did
With
a
the ring
window
around
kind
it.
of, yeah, window kind of denture in that situation. So that was really great. In which I think he placed, there was a window in the denture which was going through the tooth, the only tooth that was remaining in the whole area. And it was getting, and I think one point that he mentioned in that was that the best part about this design is that later when the tooth is lost, you'll be able to replace that portion as well, so you don't have to make the whole thing all over again.
Yeah, that's the one good thing. We had some questions about like having a few anterior teeth left, and that's it.
Oh yeah.
So you're not really going to do a chrome in that situation. My first instinct was take them out if they're uppers. But I think I forgot to write down all the questions as well. I was in a bit of a mad panic. If anyone's got the Nina's there lined up with Monoplast, if anyone's got any questions, please pop them in the chat or in the Q&A. So in terms of that, is there any other bits? Were you doing your own surveying and things like that? I guess whilst if you were training, they generally make you do all your own lab work, don't they? So
Yeah, so we had like we had our own lab, and we had like access 24/7 to that, and we used to do everything on our own during master when I was doing my master. So we used to do milling, we used to do surveying, we used to do casting and everything, like literally everything, even all ceramic restorations, these veneers, everything was done by us. Like we had all the equipment, and we had literally no lab support during so yeah, so we had a milling and a surveyor. So we used to do our surveying, but I don't know how it do you have it in your clinic, or like do you send your the cast to the
Send it all away. Send it all away. Yeah. So that'd be interesting to see what people do different. I bet Mike will do it all himself because that's Mike. Now I take impressions and send them off. So for chromes, I've got a guy who does the chromes, and then we send them off to Ricardo to do the acrylic side of it. So I just send it off with my idea for a design at the primary stage. I'll do primary impression instead of my idea and say, something like this, survey it, let me know if I need to obviously do adjustments, rest seats, guide planes,
Okay.
whatever.
So how do you do the design? Like, does it come back and then you plan it, or like it's all done by them?
£75 on eBay for a surveyor, says Mike.
Okay.
Mike, you need to set up your own eBay shop. You've got your water heater, water bath, and you've got your surveyor. So now I do like a rough, you sort of just eyeball it and say, I want to, I'll take the prime impression, and on the actual, on the lab sheet, I'll design it out and, rest, clasp, and do it like that. And then sort of, I generally, with that kind of thing, leave it to my guy, because he's a really, really good chrome guy. So you just say, this is a rough idea. I don't want anything on this tooth or this tooth because it's a bit, but let's have some backing there, so in case we need to addition. So I'll do a rough outline, but to be fair, we trained in chromes in third year of undergrad, and we did surveyors, and you do everything. And then you just don't do it anymore. You just forget. So as soon as you leave uni, you don't do it. You don't touch it. Although I'm going to hit up eBay and get a £75 surveyor from Mike's dental shop. Mike wants to talk occlusion. Are we just going to have to add Mike into the chat? Is that
yeah? Yeah. Let's. I think that would be a good.
Go on then.
Yeah.
This is going to be the first three-part. I hope Mike's ready. Stuff has to fit. See if he wants to come in. My lab mate did all the designing. Oh, hello.
Are we serious? I haven't done my hair for this. I didn't know what of you.
I'm in due with that haircut again. How you doing, Mike?
I wasn't going to say anything, but if you've offered it, yeah. How are we doing then?
I'm good. You want to talk occlusion?
Yeah. I just think that the undergraduates at Bristol are told to have mounted study casts because it's too easy to just look at a model and thinking, I want to put a rest there, I want to put a clasp there. And if you've got no occlusal clearance, it's just all out the window.
Yeah.
And then if you want to put rests where rests need to go, you've then got the discussion with the patient, am I allowed to prep your teeth? Am I allowed to prep the opposing teeth? Have we actually got to add something to teeth? We can do tons of animations on this, Avni, can't we?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I've got a list of animations for you here that have come up in the last 35, 40 minutes.
Oh, we're inspiring you, Mike.
Wow.
I like it.
You're going to be busy.
But he keeps coming up with these amazing ideas, and I'm like, wow. I wish I had more than 24 hours to do all this.
Well, the thing is, until we found you, everything was just flat-paged, descriptive, which is so much more difficult for people to get the hang of, isn't it? And when all of a sudden, then people get it, don't they? I mean, the tray insertion one that you did, people just loved it because you can't. You say to a student, you say to a dentist, do it like this, and they do it. They don't know why they're doing it, and all of a sudden, it's like, bang! I've got it now. It makes sense. So, yeah, let's just come up with ideas. I mean, I've got
I'll leave you two here to do your brainstorming. I'll just go and you guys.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just crashing this show. I'll be quiet now.
No, I like it. That's good. We haven't pushed the. I'm gonna have to Photoshop your face onto the poster for the episode, won't I? Nah.
Yeah, you can do that. Since
I've
now
only
we are.
got 3 minutes after the live finishes to do it, so I haven't got time for that. So you want to talk occlusion, Mike? So obviously, yeah, I have a little look and say this would be a rough idea, and let me know what I need to prep if you want to do that. Or, I mean, do you do your own designs and everything?
Oh, absolutely. I don't let anybody do anything. I'm such a control freak. Nobody does anything for me. But I in a lot of cases nowadays, I practice what I preach. You mount the study casts. Get your rims made on good primaries, mount the casts, and then get the lab just to send them back. And don't expect to do second impressions next visit. Expect to do a design before the patient comes in, and work out what prep you might need to do for the mouth, because you've got undercuts. And again, if you've got a model and you've got a week before the patient comes in and you can see how the occlusion is, you've got so much time to work out what you want to do. Then you say to the technician, can I do this? I mean, I think I can, so I should be able to do it by now. But you can then send your design back to the technician and say, look, this is what I want to do. What do I need to do in the mouth to let you do this? Because otherwise technicians get given, and this happens at the hospital, they get given a design, they make the chrome, and the patient comes in and just can't close the mouth. Because you put components where components should go from a optimum design point of view, but then functionally it doesn't work. And too many people look at one arch when they're doing a partial denture, rather than both the arches, how the teeth occlude, and how the components need to fit. And that's the biggest challenge. And if we're not careful, we just let them look at a single design sheet. Let's do a design for that. I can do that. I'm teaching as long as I have. The students will just see a design, or they go and try and find one from a book. So they've got to know the occlusion, and then it's easy. And then people get it. People get it, and they stop making mistakes. And the technician thinks you're a smart guy. And who doesn't want that, eh?
Now, we had part of the questions, someone asked about Scandinavian designs. And since we've got you here, Mike.
Yeah. Put some light.
Do you want to have a little chat about
Scandinavian?
Is that one of your animations on your...
It's put up as almost like a mystery subject. Oh, it's a black art. The Scandinavian design is different to everything else. It's just so simple. I said to Avni the other night, there's 2 golden rules of denture design. Well, the principle of a denture design is preserve what remains. So don't make something that's going to trash what's left. And the 2 ways of doing that is give maximum support so that the denture doesn't sink under load. And then you give maximum gingival freedom, which is Avni's design earlier on, that anterior section that was kept clear. So gingivally clear, maximum support. And I drum that into my students. I say, what's the 2 golden rules? And if they don't trot that out, well, they will. So that's what should. So all Scandinavian design is to make sure you're going to get as much support as you can. So you use the pallet if you have to. If you've got a single free-end saddle or 2 free-end saddles, you cover the pallet. You don't do ring connectors unless you've got loads of support. And you just keep it gingerly free. As I said earlier on, bend the rule. Bend the rule for the 3 millimeters. We all get told this as undergraduates, don't you? You've got to have 8 millimeters for lingual bite. Oh, so what? It doesn't matter if you've got, if it was your mum, would you give her 1 millimeter of gingival clearance or stick a lingual plate over all the lower incisors? I'd give 1 millimeter lingual clearance, wouldn't you? And say, right, I'm happy with that. The hygiene's good. It's going to be okay. If you cover stuff with lingual plates or put collets on teeth instead of arms, again, everybody knows what gingival stagnation looks like, don't they? If a patient, if you make, and this is the downside to making good dentures, if they're retentive, they're stable and patients wear them, but you've not made them Scandinavian style gingerly free, then you've got, how many hours a day are they going to wear them? Some people sleep in them, and I've stopped telling people not to, because that's just unreasonable, and it's almost inhumane. If you if you sleep with your partner and they're going to take the front teeth out at night, it's just a horrendous thing to do. So you should design your dentures, and all Scandinavian design is gingerly free, maximum support, and that's it. And if you look at Finley's designs are beautifully made, beautifully drawn, but that's all they are, and he won't tell you any different. In the Scandinavian, the only other thing about Scandinavia is they only put 2 clasps per denture normally. But that's Scandinavian design. All you got to do is just practice. And I'm going to start putting some stuff up soon when I've stopped blitzing the world with impressions, which nobody seems to tire of. But we need some animations to do impressions. We're covering that at the moment with impressions. We need some animations for Scandinavian design. So,
Yeah, so I was actually going through this article a few days back, and it was actually talking about how the old principles, they were just focusing on retention, stability, and support, and the newer concepts are like more focusing on the hygiene and maintaining the periodontal tissues. And they were the article, it was all about it's not completely about retention and about the biomechanical principles. It's also about keeping the tissues healthy. So yeah, I think the Scandinavian approach is all about that. It's about keeping the design as simple as possible, I guess.
Yeah, I think we need to demystify, because people think, I can't do Scandinavian design. No, I'll just do what I've always done. And it's not a mystery. It's easy,
Yeah.
I think. It's easy.
They look fantastic as well. I mean, it was that Finley one. Was it a 2-2, and he did almost like a bite raising on all the lingual, on all the plates, I think it was, on an upper, and it had like a sort of almost like double arms into the palate. Maybe I'm just dreaming about dentures and making up.
Well, I did one like that the other week when a patient had 2-2 left. Finley
Maybe
did one
it
with
was
3
yours. Maybe I thought it was Finley's, but it was yours.
Finley did one with 3-3, I think. But yeah, no, it's occlusal clearance. You can't do these platal coverages if you've got occlusal issues. You're going to have to factor it in. But you know, you can get away with it more often you'd think. It's just that people look at it thinking you can't do that. And then when you've done it, patients don't mind. And you look at them when they come in for reviews, and the perio conditions is beautiful. And you think, that's a 1 millimeter clearance. I don't care. It's fine. It doesn't matter.
Nina, our student and football correspondent from last time, says 1-0 to England, so that's good. And I'm dead rubber match. Zeba's asked a question, said, is it advisable to go ahead with a cast partial, so I'm assuming to use a metal, chrome-based partial, right away for a first-time denture wearer? I'm assuming that doesn't mean in an immediate circumstance, and just if you have someone with missing teeth, are you going to go for a chrome? Are you going to go for an acrylic?
I just think that I'm butting in here. I just think acrylic's a poor relation to, what would be nicer for you to wear? Do you want to poison people against? I don't know. It depends. Does the patient want it? I mean, if the patient hates it, they may think a chrome's going to be, not much better. I just saying, and it's quite easy to say in some respects, say, well, if you make a chrome, it's unlikely to break. Don't say it's never going to break, because it happens. It's going to be less bulky in the palate. It's easy to upsell a chrome if you want. I'd struggle to sell anybody an acrylic denture unless they said, there's no way I want a metal-based denture. And I've had a couple of patients before said, I don't want anything metal in my mouth. And ultimately, if they said that and they wanted an acrylic denture instead, I said, I might well say, I don't really want to compromise your mouth, because you can't build the support in half the time, can you, with acrylic dentures? And you're going to have to cover more tissues by definition. So, yeah, I would always start chrome unless is a circumstance where I can't do it for whatever reason. But it's pretty unusual, I have to say. Yeah, pretty unusual.
Yeah, I think for the majority of partial cases, a chrome is going to be a nicer option. You've got to have the teeth healthy enough, as I said. We talked about bracing, reciprocation, all that. If you've got teeth that are pretty questionable, you want to be. You can almost build in sort of splinting of the teeth.
Well, this is the other Scandinavian thing. If you build all this support in, excuse me, palatally and that, you then got the built-in option to add teeth if you have to. I mean, what you don't want to do, if you've got teeth of dubious prognosis, a lot of people say, "Oh, I'll make an acrylic until they've gone." But what if they last another 5 years? But then you hasten the demise of everything by making a tissue-borne, plaque trapping, gum stripping. I'll stop now.
Well, we've got a question here again. Over erupted upper canines, Mike. This is your bag, isn't it? What would you do when you have a patient with a single tooth in the upper arch, for instance, upper left 3, that's over erupted, affecting the lower partial, as it will not allow a replacement for lower left 4 and 5?
Well, again, this is primary registration. Mount the cast and see if because quite often chairside it'll look worse than it is.
Yeah.
So if you mount your primary cast, and then the correct vertical dimension, the vertical dimension you want to restore to, not the vertical dimension they present with, which may well be overclosed.
Yeah, in the case of a single missing tooth that they've got no reference
or sorry, a single remaining tooth.
Yeah.
They've got no reference point at all. They could be posturing into some position. You get them into a proper position, suddenly you might have all the space in the world. I mean, that was that immediate partial case that I did with the OVD was massively changed. It was actually really easy. We just retruded him, and suddenly,
yeah,
it was perfect. OVD was absolutely fine, and he went into it straight away. Yeah, so definitely, as to say, getting them in some sort of relationship before you even start thinking too much is definitely wise.
Yeah.
So someone's asked again about the patients with perio and the chromes. Have said sort of your Scandi system, you're maximizing support, so you're just distributing that load as much as possible. But yeah, those design principles again: brace, reciprocate. Don't have just bits that are going to put loads and loads of pressure on.
And if you expect to lose teeth, you know, if you've got, say you're going to lose a couple of premolars potentially, just build in some palatal wings. Your lab can then laser weld tags on, and then you can do immediate additions on them. So, you know, again, it's not an issue. And I'll make chromes on periodontally compromised teeth. If the mouth's clean and their regime's good and they maintain a good hygiene regime for a good few weeks before you start treatment, I don't mind. And I've seen teeth last way longer than you ever imagine. So, and as long as you tell the patient, these teeth are going to fail, but we've not built in obsolescence with this design. It's made in such a way that we're expecting to be able to add to it. The only downside is you're going to have to give us the chrome back for a week, because we're going to have to send it away to the guy who made it in the first place to put the tag in on and then put the teeth back. So never get them to chuck their old dentures away. Never get them to chuck their old dentures away.
So what are you requesting the lab then for this? You know, what are you communicating? Well, with yourself, because you're not making metal work, but so you're saying, you know, metal, or generally I'm just like, you know, I'm concerned with these and these. Let's have something that we can do, whether it's a little bit of mesh on the framework in that area. Is there a wing? So
I would do wings. Wings are way nice. The mesh is going to feel awful for the patient, and when you do the addition, the acrylic's got to be the palatal side of the mesh, which is going to make it massively bulky.
Bulky there.
Whereas if you do palatal wings as though they were Maryland wings, the lab can then laser weld to the wing when the tooth's extracted. They put a tag on it, and then you can do an addition, and it's almost like you may never know it was done.
Yeah.
So, but you need a good technician. And again, this is where you need to say to the technician, look, I'm anticipating the loss of this tooth.
Yeah. You got to
make this wing beefy enough and supported enough, and the struts and the minor connectors that feed it are strong enough that if there's a tooth hanging off this, it's not going to move. Yeah. It's all, you know, plan it, and you need a good chrome technician. And you need to tell the patient, which, you know, most of them are fine about it, aren't they?
They know the situation. So I don't know.
Also, like for perio problems, I think it'll help in splinting those teeth. So I feel like it'll provide support and to the teeth, the teeth that are already compromised if we give a chrome denture. So I think it'll be good for the teeth rather than, you know, something bad happening to them.
Yeah, it's just about designing it. But again, you want even a healthy or a relatively healthy tooth. If you design it poorly, you can be detrimental as well.
Oh yeah, you'll finish it off. You'll shorten its lifespan. But then I guess before we say goodnight, we ought to say to everybody, even if you're making acrylic dentures, which I know sadly are forced on a lot of dentists by the system we work within, certainly within the UK, the health service is going to do it, is you can still apply the same principles. You know, keep it gingerly clear and get as much support as you can. And there's nothing to stop you putting acrylic dentures with metal rests into them, which most dentists don't know about because most dental schools don't teach it. But you can get half-round stainless steel, which you can then fabricate as a rest, and you can build that into an acrylic-based denture and make it massively better than it would be were it just a gum stripper, particularly on lowers. You know, if you've got lower bounded saddle acrylic denture, is just going to sink south, isn't it? There's nothing to stop you putting rests on the proximal teeth in stainless steel, and all of a sudden the denture's then tooth-borne and it stops sinking. To keep it gingerly, do we just request the lab? Yeah, you ask the lab, but most of the time I would suggest anybody who does the primary cast, then the secondaries, draw your design actually physically on the model in pencil on the primary cast. One is you can see if it's going to fit. And two, the lab knows what you're expecting. Don't draw on a secondary cast, probably because they're going to pour them up and get to them before you do. But if the primary cast come back, sketch your design out in your mind first, sketch it on a piece of paper, and when you worked out what you want to do, and what I do nowadays is, for students, is I take a photograph with the iPad, and then use UDoodle or any design, and draw the design on the iPad photograph, and then draw that on the cast with a pencil. And if you think, well, that works, the technician now knows what you want to do. He knows your outlines, and he'll do the same on secondary.
We've got 5 minutes. Any tips on design principles for upper partials in patients with a deep overbite? Great fun.
Well, again, do an idealized design that you want, and then say to the technician, can I do this? And if he says no, you're going to have to create some vertical space. You're going to ask yourself the question, can you do it? If you can't do it, you can't do it. Can you prop the patient open a bit? Dial works. If you make a gingerly healthy denture, there's no reason why a patient can't wear it 24/7, except say go out and clean it. So why does that not work like a dial? If it's properly supported, you can actually create some space, but you've got to design it in such a way, and you're going to have to tell the patient the bite's going to feel really weird for some time. Well, dial works because it's there 24/7, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So why can't it work on removables? I mean, you can have the same effect in ortho, can't you? I think they used to, in the old days, used to do ortho with removables and jack people open, didn't they? We'll change dimensions. So I'll try it.
Yeah, it's the principles there, isn't it? It's the case of transitioning it to if it's like an immediate with but that's the tricky bit when you've got acrylic and not metal work. That's
then tricky. Yeah, that's then tricky.
Perfect.
Ooh, last minute question.
Last minute question, quick. What would you suggest for partial edentulous upper and lower arch, and you want to replace anterior teeth? Will you suggest an implant or implant-based denture? Depends what the patient wants, really, doesn't it? And costs and
whether implants are practical.
Yeah,
that's a three-way discussion. You, the patient, and the implantologist. If you don't do your own implants, isn't it? Before you make any promises.
It also depends on the space present between the upper and the lower teeth. So if it's a deep bite, again the same scenario. We don't want the lowers to hit your implants, upper implants. So
and it's another thing for the technician. If you want to put implants in and put locators in, can the lab actually get a chrome over the locators and then get a tooth over the denture? Space is such an issue, and as an ex-technician, you'd sit there thinking, how the hell am I going to make this fit? Because nobody asked you before they prescribed it, and it's like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
Or it's such a compromise. So yeah, talk to your technicians. They're worth every penny.
It's different. The implant one's a trick. I'm doing a case at the moment where we're trying to work out what we can use, and we're doing it in wax and looking at how much space we've got, and it's conceptualizing it is really tricky. I think we're going to have to call it there before we get cut off. Avni, thank you so much. Mike, cheers for popping on. I'll leave you two to plan your next.
Gatecrasher.
I quite like it. It works quite well. We might have to do some triple Impression Club lives coming up.
Okay.
Awesome, guys. Thank you both, and see you guys in a couple of weeks.
Okay. Cheers, guys. Bye then.
Bye.